Welcome to the Nathan Nephew Show. I am Nathan Nephew, coming to you in front of a live studio audience today. A rare occasion to have a live audience. Usually they're not so live. Got a lot to talk about today. Like I promised last week, or maybe a couple weeks ago. Even now, I've been a bit busy. Moving studio, brand new studio here, and since you listened to At Odds, I know you did at oddshow.com. You know already that we have a brand new studio, same studio that I broadcast from. Much nicer. Luckily, I'm not in Kenya today. I am back in the United States, right here in Michigan, Lansing area. Got a lot to talk about, and like I promised, we will go further into the Constitution, which I've heard from some people is it's risky, is what I was told, because nobody cares about the Constitution. Nobody likes the Constitution. It's not something that people want to talk about. They don't want to hear about how their government is not following the Constitution, how their government is directly contradicting the reasons the Constitution was written and the words that the Constitution uses to place limits on that government. But I know definitely the people that listen to Red State Talk Radio, of course, where you listen to this show most of the time if you're not on nathannephew.com, you do care about the Constitution, because otherwise you'd be a Democrat and you'd be listening to Blue State Talk Radio, which, by the way, I wouldn't suggest it because those shows are all really boring. Anyway, last time we went through the preamble of the Constitution, we went through Article 1, Section 1 of the Constitution, which basically just lays out that all legislative powers are granted to Congress, not to the executive branch. So Department of Homeland Security and the EPA, they can't really make legislative decisions. They do, and we follow them, but legally, constitutionally, they can't. Section 2 of the United States Constitution sets out who can be elected to the House of Representatives and when they should be chosen. Basically, it says we have an election to elect new House members, new representatives every second year, every 2 years. And that's how we get midterm elections, which we have one coming up next year, 2014. They're on even number years. And Article 1, Section 2 sets out who can vote for the House of Representatives, the members of the House of Representatives. And that is those people who qualify to vote for the largest section of the state legislature. So essentially, the states get to set who can vote in their elections, who gets to choose the representatives of each state. So that is still a state, the states within their rights to determine who can vote for the House of Representatives. Now, who can serve as a representative has to be 25 years of age and been a citizen of the United States for 7 years. And, this is the tricky part, when they are elected, they have to be an inhabitant of that state. So, you have to live in Michigan when you're elected, but the Constitution does not say that somebody who is running for the 31st district necessarily has to live in the 31st district. They just have to live in the state that they're elected to represent. So that's interesting. It's mostly tradition and things that cause people to elect residents of the district, which I think makes sense. If you're being represented by somebody, you want them to live close to you, know the local issues, know the people, know what's going on around them, and be able to accurately represent you. So that makes a lot of sense. But the Constitution does not state that a representative necessarily lives within the district that they're representing, only the state. Now, here is the first time, the first section of the Constitution that has been amended, that we've gotten to anyway. And basically this says, how do you split up the number of representatives? Originally, it was all of the free people, taxpayers, so excluding Indians that did not pay taxes, including indentured servants, and 3/5 of all other people. So slaves, because a lot of states had high populations that were propped up because of slave ownership, and it wasn't really fair to count all of those people, and that was the thought anyway. That was the compromise when the Constitution was written. Slaves would be counted as 3/5 of a person to kind of mitigate some of the disparity between non-slave states and slave states. Slave states will obviously have an inflated population. That was changed, of course, with the 14th Amendment, basically saying that all people that have been born here, naturalized, or citizens, they all count. They're all free, and they all count as a full person. Now, originally, representatives were counted within 3 years after the first meeting of Congress, and then within every 10 years. Now, we have a census. This is where the census comes in. The Constitution does not say that the census must be taken every 10 years. In fact, the census could be taken every other year. It says it has to be taken within every 10 years. And that's when you get redistricting. That's when you get representatives being shuffled around and states getting more or less and districts getting more or less. We do it pretty much every 10 years now, but you do not have to do it every 10 years. That's just, Congress could make the decision to do it every year, every other year, every 3 years, every 5 years. Of course, we do it every 10. It makes sense, whatever. I don't know. That's just a decision that's been made, and I suppose it seems to work. I mean, every once in a while you get somebody coming, knocking on your door and annoying you and wanting to ask you questions about your family. And, I guess that's part of your duty as a citizen. I don't know. We have to follow the Constitution. The government doesn't. So it's one of those weird situations where, we're becoming so used to it in this country that we just do what's done and we don't even question it, and it doesn't matter. And we answer the census, and we think that everything's mandatory, and what the government says is what goes. Anyway, way off track on that. Article 1, Section 2 also says that the number of representatives shouldn't be more than one for every 30,000 people in the state. And every state should have at least one. So if you have a state with less than 30,000, population of 30,000, you still get a representative. And here's another interesting point, and this has come up recently. If there's a vacancy, if a representative dies in office or quits or whatever happens, there's a vacancy for any state, the executive authority of that state shall fill the vacancies through a writ of election. So basically have a special election or whatever the state deems appropriate. The executive authority, so the governor in most situations, I'd say in about 50 out of 50 situations, or the state executive branch, whatever their executive authority is. Again, we're putting this on the state because that was the intent, was that states would have power. They would decide who represents them, who was qualified to represent them, and really who can vote. Power was supposed to be with the states and with the people. The one point in this where the power is not with the state is where the House of Representatives chooses their own speaker and other officers and has power of impeachment. So you remember when Clinton was impeached, Nixon maybe Obama should be impeached. I don't know, but the House of Representatives is where that would start. They have the sole power of impeachment. That happens very rarely, but within our lifetime, it has happened. And, I'm sure it'll happen again because we're getting the nature of politics, I think, is getting, it doesn't feel like it, but I think we're moving back to an environment like we used to have in this country where people were involved, where people paid attention to what their elected officials were doing, where people didn't just sit on their asses at home and just go with the flow. We still definitely have a good number of people that do that. But with Tea Parties, with 9/12 groups, with just all of these patriot organizations, people just waking up and realizing that well, maybe we need to pay attention. And I really think it's cyclical. I think you start and you have a revolution. And I have the Declaration of Independence right up here on the wall. You have a revolution. People are definitely paying attention. Everyone's on the same side. You're with the country, patriotic, everything. And then eventually that kind of fades away. And it takes, it took a while in this country, and a while being 100, 200 years. But people stop paying attention and the government gets more and more and more power. Now, hopefully, if that happens, the people wake up before it's too late. Something happened in our reality today where I don't know that everybody has heard the message early enough, but definitely people are waking up. So I could see a real possibility of seeing an impeachment again. Hopefully that doesn't happen. The other side to that is people are awake, so hopefully we'll make the right decision. Definitely in 2014 we have a big election, the midterm elections, representatives, senators that are going to be voted for, and we need to make the right choices. And then of course in 2016 the presidential election. This is all on top of local elections, which are so vitally important. I've said it 1,000 times. Your sheriff, that election, one of the most important elections. It doesn't seem like it is, doesn't seem like it is or should be a political office, but it is. And they can be your last line of defense against the federal government coming in, trying to take over in your state, in your county, in your city. Of course, you are always the last line of defense, but sheriffs, we've seen them standing up, we've seen them doing good things, and they're important elections. I'm going to take a quick break. I'll come back. I want to talk about Obama. He said some really brilliant things lately, like he always does. NathanNephew.com. Look me up on Facebook, and I will be right back.
When it comes to TV, if you can't see the difference, why pay the difference? Switch to Dish for the best value in entertainment. Not only will you find the same channels you know and love for less, Dish sweetens the deal with free HD for life and premium movie channels free for 3 months, including Blockbuster at home. You can also save a bundle when you combine DishNet high-speed internet with your TV service. Why would you ever pay more for TV? Switch to Dish and see what real value is. Free HD for life, premium channels free for 3 months, scores of movies with Blockbuster at home, premium savings when you bundle DishNet high-speed internet service. Limited time offer, 24-month agreement with credit qualification required. Cancellation fee, auto pay, and paperless billing and other restrictions apply. Call for details.
Call Dish Satellite, your Dish authorized retailer now. 800-507-9468. 800-507-9468. 800-507-9468. That's 800-507-9468.
Red State Talk Radio is All American Talk Radio.
The Nathan Nephew Show. Somewhat unique.
Somewhat unique?
Yes, somewhat unique.
Welcome back. I am Nathan Nephew. This is, of course, the Nathan Nephew Show, and obviously you're listening right here on Red State Talk Radio. If not, you're on NathanNephew.com. Of course, you can look me up on Facebook, like I said before the break. I wanted to talk about Obama because, I mean, honestly, what's more fun than talking about the President of the United States and just reflecting on all of the good things he's done for us since he was elected in 2009. I mean, can you imagine this world if Mitt Romney had been elected president? We would have prosperity and slightly more freedom, and we'd be drilling for oil, and there would be more places like North Dakota where they have full employment. Man, I just, in that 1%, they'd be creating jobs and employing people and spending money. And we wouldn't have McDonald's employees going on strike because they demand $15 an hour. But, alas, we have Barack Hussein Obama as our president. And We do not have full employment, and we do not have as much drilling for oil as we do, and we do not have jobs being created, and we do not have people making $15 an hour. Well, I guess he does want to raise the minimum wage, so maybe we will soon enough have McDonald's low-level employees making $15 an hour, but I guess we'll see. When that happens, people won't be buying McDonald's. So maybe Bloomberg will be happy because people won't be getting fat by eating McDonald's because it'll be too damn expensive. Barack Obama went on Jay Leno this week, and when you have something going on like the most specific terror threat since 9/11, when you have that going on, the best thing to do is not have a briefing, a press briefing, as the president, not come out and say, look, this is important country, and since I'm the leader of the country, this is what I'm going to tell you to do. No, that's not the best way to handle this. The best way to handle this is to go on a comedy show and laugh about things and make jokes and then talk about national security. The first time this president went on the air to talk about national security since Benghazi really is on Jay Leno. And that's just completely absurd. Now, I do want to talk about something else. This was not necessarily national security. He talked about what we need to do because we're expanding the Panama Canal so really, 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 really big ships can go through and get to all those Gulf ports, in the Gulf of Mexico.
If we don't deepen our ports all along the Gulf, places like Charleston, South Carolina, or Savannah, Georgia, or Jacksonville, Florida, if we don't do that, those ships are going to go someplace else.
Now, South Carolina and their border with the Gulf of Mexico and the ports that they have on the Gulf of Mexico and Georgia on the Gulf. No, I think he was a bit wrong. Now, that's whatever. You can excuse it other than it wasn't the first time he made the same mistake, Mr. Corpsman. The AP put out an article. And let's see, what did they write? They said, this is their quote of Barack Obama, if we don't deepen our ports all along the Gulf, in parentheses, and in places like Charleston, South Carolina, Savannah, Georgia, Jacksonville, Florida. So they added words for the president, which happens sometimes. They make interpretations when people don't enunciate or when people don't say and. It was obvious what the president meant. He said along the Gulf in places like. He did not say and in places like. The AP added that for the president because the entire MO of the media since Barack Obama has been elected the first black president of the United States of America is to protect him and do everything they can to make him look good. It's not to... Jay Leno on his show actually asked some real questions. Now, they weren't the real questions I would have asked. Like, hey, Nobel Peace Prize winner, why are you murdering people in acts of war but you still keep the Nobel Peace Prize? I'm not saying I disagree with all the drone strikes, but you took the Nobel Peace Prize, which you won for things that you were planning on doing, not anything you have done. So, really, those are the kind of questions I would ask him. And, hey, how about Fast and Furious? Maybe Benghazi. Maybe that one's important. Which scandals are phony? But Jay Leno did ask some decent questions. But the real problem is that the real journalists, the real press agencies, not the late night comedy shows, have a legitimate fear that they won't have access to the president. I mean, do you remember during the campaign, he was selling access to himself. For a $100,000 donation, I'll give you a 30-minute interview. Well, that's not really how presidents act, is it? Obviously it is. This president acts exactly like that. But the AP did... They sort of issued a correction. They sort of apologized. They said, well, Charleston, Savannah, and Jacksonville are indeed not Gulf ports. And it wasn't known if the president was suggesting they were. Okay, so it wasn't known, which makes this last sentence even more relevant. The AP, and this is from the AP, the AP should not have added the phrase in an effort to clarify his statement. Nope. I would say that you shouldn't have added the phrase in order to clarify a statement. And in fact, what you did, which the media, including you, AP, have a history of doing, is completely changed what he said to make him not sound like a complete idiot. Now, I'm sorry, and it's hard to admit, and most people don't want to admit, that we have a moron running this country, but we do. Now, that doesn't say a lot for the people who put no thought into their vote. But the man running this country, first of all, I don't think he likes the country very much. And I think there's very good evidence pointing to the fact that he is an anti-colonialist and blames superpowers like the United States of America for other countries like Kenya or other places in this world for not being so prosperous, and not blaming, I don't know, dictators and socialism and communism. He blames the places that become wealthy, that employ people, that actually have prosperity, and until he came along, really good healthcare systems. He blames the United States. So I don't think that it is prudent. And in fact, if you look at ratings, look at the CNN's rating, look at all the liberal rag newspapers, they're not doing very well. It's because people are starting to get it and know, yeah, Piers Morgan isn't really, first of all, in line with what the American people think, and definitely not in line with how a journalist or any media type should be. And that's why his ratings are horrible. CNN's ratings are terrible. And did you hear the rumors that Sean Hannity's been fired from Fox News? Yeah, they canned him, turns out. Or maybe nobody has any idea what's going on and everybody's speculating, which is funny. But it did leak from very good sources that Megyn Kelly, she's coming back from maternity leave, and she is taking the 9 p.m. slot, which Hannity had, which is pretty cool. I like Megyn Kelly for a lot of reasons, one being her politics. And Sean Hannity, he's all right. I laugh when people call him a hard right extremist, because I can point to several situations where he's been a bit more progressive on things. He's far from liberal, but I don't know that he's the farthest right-wing extremist that I've ever seen. Someday, we're going to have to try to force the media to stop what they're doing. We're going to have to force the White House to stop limiting access based on what's reported. Now, the president, maybe not the president, maybe other people, Valerie Jarrett, calling up these media outlets saying, hey, don't report that because it makes us look bad. And if we look bad, we're not really going to work with you, and we're not going to give you that interview, Diane Sawyer. So what we need you to do is just kind of be nice and maybe just stay away from Fast and Furious and maybe Benghazi, and maybe stay away from, the phone tapping at the AP, and maybe stay away from the IRS, the IRS, kind of, targeting conservative groups. Maybe stay away from drone strikes on American citizens. Maybe don't mention the fact that I promised I'd close Guantanamo Bay, but I haven't closed Guantanamo Bay. Maybe avoid that. Maybe avoid the fact that I have a Nobel Peace Prize, but I still murder. Maybe stay away from the fact that Obamacare is such a great bill that we're postponing it, and that we're cutting places out, and that we're still going to give subsidies to the representatives and the people that passed the bill and their aides. They're still going to get subsidized. So the government insurance that they're going to get will still be subsidized by government dollars, which is really tax money. So it's all going to be paid for by tax money, because that's the best way to do it. Maybe stay away from the fact that the Volt wasn't the best thing, and that maybe Solyndra wasn't the right thing to subsidize. Maybe stay away from the fact that every campaign donor got some favor in return from me. All the big ones anyway, the bundlers, is Solyndra, and the like. Maybe stay away from that. And then I'll come on your show and I'll laugh it up with you. And that's when I'm done with Jay-Z and Beyonce and Jay Leno. Maybe I'll come on ABC or Telemundo or something, but I don't know. That's just the world we're living in, and something needs to be done about it, and I think it needs to be done quickly, and I don't know if we have the time necessarily to wait for 2016. I think what really needs to happen is there needs to be a ton of pressure on your representatives, U.S. House, U.S. Senate, ton of pressure on them tell them, get away from this amnesty crap. Get away from any anti-gun legislation. Anything that's anti-freedom, capitalism. Anything that's limiting individuals' power to choose their own destiny. Get away from it. We need to stop following these executive orders. It's not known very well, but these executive orders really have no power. In reality, they do because, I mean, what are you going to do when the government scoops you up and throws you in Guantanamo Bay? There's no chance it's going to be closed anytime soon, but I don't know that you have to obey an executive order. But we just do because it's just the world we're living in. Next week, Article 1, Section 3, the Senate will go through that. Let me know what you think. Talk at NathanNephew.com. Of course, you can listen to this show and past shows. If you missed the preamble in Section 1, you can find that show on NathanNephew.com as well. This show will be on Red State Talk Radio and up there. And don't forget to listen to my other show that I do with Brian. Brian's a cool guy. Also, it's his birthday tomorrow, so I want to tell him happy birthday. When he listens to this, he will hear that. And I hope he gets all the presents he wants and his wishes all come true. I know one present he will not be getting that he asked for, but that's another story. NathanNephew.com. See you next week.